Good morning. Happy Saturday. Welcome into Let's Bet It here on Pickswise and Pickswise.com. Let's Bet It brought to you by Superbook Sports. I'm Mark Zinno. He's Brandon Marcello. Please subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Leave a comment below. Let us know what games you're on, what questions you have as well. Download the Pickswise app. It's available on the Apple Store or Google Play. We've got a lot to get to today. Obviously, recapping the Pac-12 championship last night, college football playoff expansion, some coaching news to get to, and of course, all the games for today. Brandon, great to be with you as always. Happy Saturday. Happy for you. Well, no, yeah, happy for you. Not happy for me, nor USC for that matter. Watch my money go down the drain with USC's college football playoff championship hopes all gone in a quick, swift 3 quarters.
Yeah, so I'd say it's surprising, but the way USC plays defense this year, and then Utah, I kept tweeting this last night, strength over scheme. I mean, Utah was just bullying them in those last really 3 quarters.
Come
And
on. This is not the same Utah defense we've seen from you. Like, they showed up last night. I give them credit. But I think last night was more about USC's failed execution,
no,
bad
no,
tackling.
Utah pushed them around, man. No, no, don't agree with
I
that.
don't see it. No, I don't see it. I don't see it. We're going to agree to disagree. Or we're not going to agree, but we're going to disagree. Regardless, look, USC sprints out to this huge lead. And I will say this much, from the standpoint of bullying them around, yeah, they rushed for 200 yards, Utah did. And USC, after the first quarter, decided to stop running the ball. Like, I don't understand where Lincoln Riley was, what he was thinking, what he was doing after he built that 17-3 lead. It seemed like he just relaxed, stopped coaching, and said, "We got this one. We'll just run out the
Well,
string of the next 40 minutes."
all right. Well, I'll say this. Look, Caleb Williams was hobbled, obviously. He had the hamstring
Oh, yeah.
issue, and they're running a lot of zone read. And so they had to stop running the ball because they were zeroing in on the running back the entire time. They knew that they're just Caleb Williams was not going to keep the ball after that first quarter when the injury was getting worse. So the running game, as you even seen in the fourth quarter, they're trying to do some of the zone read stuff still, and it just wasn't working and getting stuff. So that's why they had to stop running the ball. I mean, USC was completely hamstrung. I mean, by Caleb being injured, they couldn't do what they want to do.
Yeah, it was a shame to watch. It was a shame to see. And again, for me, it was more about USC's defense. That it was a 17-all game in the third quarter. USC's defense has a 3rd and 19, and they give up a 59-yard, 51-yard touchdown. It was just gross. USC's defense was gross last night. They couldn't tackle. They looked like they were trying to grab a wet bar of soap in the shower. Utah, ball carriers and wide receivers were just bouncing off guys everywhere. It was bad. USC's defense, which has been suspect all year long, I fully admit that, and was very opportunistic. They led the nation, or a top 3 in turnover margin and turnovers themselves. Got a couple early, couldn't get any late, and it just it was their undoing last night.
Yeah, the tackling was atrocious, and it had been all season for the most part, but last night was an all-timer for them. It was almost like I don't know if it was effort or strength or whatever. I think it was a combination of a lot of things. I think they just were against the ropes, and they just didn't know how to react. I mean, those last 2 touchdowns by Utah, where they were just literally pushing the guy down the ground for like the last 5 yards, it looked like a kid trying to tackle their dad in backyard football. That was embarrassing to watch.
Yeah.
I would hate to look at the film today if I had to sit there. Ugh.
And I'll add one more thing just in reference to sort of the coaching aspect of this whole thing. And that's, USC didn't convert a 3rd down in this game until the fourth quarter. They went 1 for 12
That too.
on 3rd downs. And what happened was I think Lincoln Riley early on went for it on 4th down twice, including a 4th and goal situation, and got it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it sort of inflated their mentality a little bit of, hey, you know what? If we don't get on 3rd down, we could beat these guys in 4 downs. Everything's 4-down territory. And I think he just sort of mismanaged it a little bit and sort of got a little over sense of that they were going to dominate this team for 4 quarters when it happened early on. It just didn't work out for them. And while, again, I think the Caleb Williams injury, we're not talking enough about how much that impacted USC last night because their defense was so atrocious. I knew it was going to be a back-and-forth game, and I remember texting with a friend last night telling him, look, don't get excited at 17-3. There's a lot of game left there. This defense is still very suspect. I knew they were going to give up points. They just couldn't counterpunch when Caleb Williams was injured, and I think that really changed the outcome of the game overall.
The game was very similar to what the game was in Salt Lake City earlier this
Yes,
season.
very
USC had a
much
chance to land a knockout punch and then just
early
stubbed
on.
their
Yep.
toe, couldn't get anything going. I mean, listen, I think this game would have been much different, even with Caleb Williams injured, if they had been able to score after that turnover early in the first half when they
Yep. They
forced
got
that
that
turnover.
turnover.
You're right.
Couldn't even make it 3 points.
Yeah, and
So
exactly, and I think they would have. I think Utah, not to say they would have laid down, but that changes the complete complexion of that game, and
100%.
Utah took advantage.
Yeah, I mean, and again, even at that, if you kick the field goal, they still got to go the length of the field to put a score back up, and that wasn't the case after the punt. So, regardless, USC is now hoping or wishing for some more chaos to go on somewhere along the line to keep their college football playoff hopes alive. And one of the emerging conversations, Brandon, that came out of last night, and it's still going on Twitter, is happening last night, and it's happening this morning, and I'm guilty of being suckered into it, so I apologize, but nonetheless. The college football playoff has agreed to expand starting in 2024, 2025. And my short response is when that happens, last night's game is meaningless because Utah and USC are both going in to the playoff. And with that, it's like the Caleb Williams injury. Lincoln Riley says as soon as he's hobbled, get off the field, kid. We got bigger things to do. We got a couple of weeks to rest. Go get off the field. We're not even going to play the rest of this game. And some backup janky quarterback is in there for the rest of the game to decide the Pac-12 champion. And it doesn't really matter. And TCU today doesn't really matter. And Georgia doesn't really matter. Like, none of these games matter today when you have a 12-team playoff because they're all going into the playoff.
It matters. Yeah, those teams are going in, and for the most part, they're going in anyway, other than USC, because if TCU loses today, they're going to be in. Georgia as well, of course. Same with Michigan. But it matters because Utah would be in the playoff. They would not have been in the playoff with a loss last night. They would not have been in that top 12. And as not being a conference champion, they would not have gotten that auto berth. I disagree with you completely there. Of course, these games matter.
Come
Most
on.
of
I mean,
these teams.
does Michigan, Ohio State last week have the same juice when there's a 12-team playoff? I mean, it's Michigan, Ohio State. It always has juice, but it doesn't. It didn't.
Seeding,
That game
yeah,
would
it
never
does.
have mattered. What is seeding?
Seeding still,
You're not
seeding's still
argue to
going to
me that
matter.
seeding is more important than getting in.
Home games in the first round. That you don't think that matters with seeding? Yeah, it matters.
Again,
Dude, I think you're completely off base here, man. I don't get that at all.
Hey, listen, don't take that tone with me, okay? We're friends here. But you can't argue
Utah's
that
Utah's in the playoff right now and would not have been with a loss last night.
Who would have knocked them out? Washington's not playing a game. State's not playing a game. LSU's not
hey, listen, they would have dropped them probably 2 or 3 spots, and that would have been enough. They would have. The committee would have dropped them with a loss.
No, I can't argue with you. I'm just saying these games mean less when, again, USC would have been in, Caleb Williams would have walked out of that game, and Utah would have had a cakewalk the rest of the way.
It means less for the team. I'll say this. It means less for the teams if they know they're already a top 4 team. Beyond that, it still means a lot. One, also, I'll say this too. You don't think that winning a conference championship still matters to the kids? Like we saw last night after the game that Caleb Williams was telling Lincoln Riley, don't pull me out. I'm playing to the very end of this game. And we saw him get hit huge 3 times there on those final 2 drives when the game was out of reach. And he still wanted to play out there. And Lincoln kept him out there. Now, is that a little bit different with the playoff spot maybe wrapped up? Maybe. But I think they would have continued to play him with the game still within reach because they want to win a conference championship. I know it seems, but in the moment when you're on the field, they want to win a conference championship still. They still do.
The kids always want to win. The kids always want to win a conference championship. That matters to them.
And I think it'd be difficult for the coaches to say, no, you're not playing. I really do. I think it's different than NFL. I think it's different with the amateurs, man. I really do. I think that's different.
Well, you're right there. Again, talk to Georgia players today. They've only had one SEC title. Now it would be in 5 years if they don't win today. So it absolutely matters. That absolutely matters to the kids. By the way, I don't know if Cam Rising has a headache today, but that was one of the most vicious hits I've seen since Jadeveon Clowney all the way back in the Outback Bowl about, 7 or 8 years ago right now.
Yeah, God, it's so long ago. He needs to buckle his chin strap. Why are you not buckling your chin strap, man? Keep that helmet on. I think that was brutal, though.
I thought he was dead. And credit to the refs, by the way, for not calling targeting, because that was as
Yeah.
good of a hit as you can lay on somebody without targeting. It was clearly shoulder. The helmets never made contact. Glad they didn't, go over the top there and try to throw a target. It was just a vicious hit, and Cam Rising's helmet, as you said, wasn't strapped in very well. So anyway, look, I'm just anti-expansion. That's the bottom line for me. I like the exclusivity of the whole thing. I like the fact that, every regular season game matters. Again, if I am a program right now like Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, whoever it is, you know what my non-conference schedule is? It's back to Akron. It's back to Troy. It's back to Pepperdine. I'm not playing a single game because all I got to do is get to 11-1 or 12-0, and guess what? I'm going to the playoff. That's it.
Yeah, that's
it's
what
that simple.
I don't get. I don't understand all these other ADs and everything thinking they got to strengthen their schedules in this new playoff format. I'm with you. Like, why would you do that?
It never has to happen this year. LSU would be in if they never play. If they played Alabama A&M instead of Florida State, they'd be in the playoff in an expanded playoff right now.
You're exactly right. I don't understand why ADs are thinking they got to strengthen their schedules in this new playoff format. I'd never have understood that.
No, it's going to get a heck of
unless
a
you're
lot
a group of five, unless you're like a group of five school,
Well,
maybe.
yes,
But even
the
then.
group of five schools are going to be lusting to play a Power Five and try to beat them, even if it is a Georgia Tech or a Colorado or whoever it may be. Group of five wants to play those teams, get a W, and have the right to say, "Hey, we'll be one of the group of five teams in here." All right. That said, right now, I know we have games left to play today, but if you had to pick your top four, Brendan, who would it be?
Oh, man. It's a good question. This will not be the playoff rankings, but this is how I'd rank them right now going to the games. Michigan, number 1, Georgia 2, TCU 3, Ohio State 4.
Yeah, I mean, I have UGA over Michigan, same thing. But that's what we think the playoff rankings will be. Let me phrase the question a different way. Who are the 4 best teams that you see right now? Because that's not always who gets in the playoff.
It's those 4 to me. That's how I'd rank them: Michigan, Georgia, TCU, Ohio State right now. If oh man, if Hendon Hooker was healthy, I might still slide them in over Ohio State and Alabama right now. I really probably would, even with that defense being atrocious.
I'll ask one more question before we move on here, because this is the other raging debate on Twitter right now or in the social media world. If TCU slips up and loses today, is Alabama your 4th team in the playoff?
No. TCU still in my eyes.
It.
Bama does not deserve to be in.
Ohio State above them?
Yes, absolutely. Alabama does not have a signature win. They do not look like a playoff team even when you watch them in person. I've watched them in person twice this season. They do not look like a playoff team. They just don't. And I know we talk about eye test and all this stuff and all this other criteria. Bama does not deserve to be in there, and they don't have the resume for it. Ohio State has a better resume.
They played a tougher strength of schedule than TCU has, if that matters.
TCU just with 1 loss, and here's the other thing. Part of the criteria for the playoff committee is they do focus on if they played a team when they were ranked at the time. Now, a lot of the teams TCU played, they're not ranked anymore, but TCU's got 4 wins, excuse me,
5
against ranked opponents. So they're going to weigh that. They're going to give them the benefit of the doubt on that.
No, I mean, listen, I'm with you. TCU has put together a very impressive resume. But again, just to sort of circle back, this whole point is moot about Alabama when you expand, because they're in regardless. So that's part of the – I enjoy the debate and the conversation, as you know. And that's part of what I enjoy about the exclusivity of the whole thing.
Yeah, and they'd be hosting a home game, too, in the first round, which would be huge for them. It would pretty much – they would most likely be in the quarterfinals as a result, no matter the opponent, because it's extremely difficult to play in Tuscaloosa.
You think? Brian Denny have a little bit of a home field advantage?
I mean, especially in a playoff setting. Can you imagine?
Yeah. I mean, and look, one more thing here, because I can't get off this topic that quickly. The college football playoff is going to make this whatever they want it to be, which is to say they'll make it whatever makes them the most money. However, the home field advantage thing, the first round on a home site, which we're all lusting after because it sounds awesome and it's great. Imagine the energy in Brian Denny for a, quote, playoff game. right? Because that's the energy we put into the Iron Bowl, into Michigan, Ohio State, into Georgia, Florida. Like that's the energy we put into those things because they are the only subset we have of it. However, the bowl partners have paid now what we're calling billions of dollars to be able to dictate where games are played and whether you're not moving the Rose Bowl to Ann Arbor. You're not taking the Peach Bowl and putting it in Auburn. Like that's not happening. So, there is only so much juice you can squeeze out of this thing before the people who are putting the real dollars up are going to flex their muscle and say, this is what we're doing. And you're going to go along with it. And they say, yes, we are.
Well, that's the thing, and I've reported on this week too, and asking Bill Hancock, the CFP executive director, about this. So the expanded playoff, it's 24 and 25, 26 and beyond. They could change the format once again if they want to under the new contract. They don't have a new contract yet. Well, they're going to stick with the 12, obviously, but
the television will decide that, right? The television rights will decide that.
Certainly, but there is an opening there after these first 2 years to go, you know what? These campus games are great. They're making more money for the schools, obviously. Let's play first round games and quarterfinal games both on campuses. Let's not go to the bowl system in the quarterfinals. There's a very real possibility that they sit back and go, screw you, bowl system. We're sorry, but our schools are getting more money this way. You guys go do your thing with the bowl still, and we'll start playing them in the semifinals. But this is too good to pass up, and it's too good for TV because of the atmosphere. And also, you're not going, my goodness, we're going to ask fan bases to travel, 4 out of 5 weeks or 4 weeks straight. They're going to see these first 2 years. It's not going to work. And again, that is completely open. Bill Hancock said it's open. They'll see. So I think there's going to be a strong push to put those first 2 rounds on home campuses.
I can't wait for the Missouri-Illinois Cotton Bowl in a couple of years. It's going to be an awesome game. So pumped for it. Because everybody else is in the playoff. Cotton Bowl, Illinois, Missouri, let's go.
It'll no longer be it'll no longer be the Cotton Bowl Classic. It'll be like New Coke, the new Cotton Bowl Classic, because they're going to be such bad games.
The Crystal Pepsi Classic, starring Georgia Tech and Syracuse. All right, here we go. Moving on. Anyway, they're in the same conference. I digress. Coaching news to get to here. Yeah, right. For now, right? But I can't talk about this for hours. Brandon, we need a podcast.
I know.
Anyway, I know. Let's get to college football coaching news here. Hugh Freeze headed to Auburn. Trent Dilfer now to UAB, which is very interesting. Luke Fickell gets a job at Wisconsin. And prime time, Deion Sanders likely headed to Colorado, although the ink isn't dry yet. Let's start with Hugh Freeze to Auburn. Great hire. Great. Like, I don't know if they could have done it any better for a guy who's already familiar with the SEC, has already beat Nick Saban. Like, again, this is not something I think it's a little bit ridiculous. You had to put a clause in there to treat a grown man like a child. And I get it. He's done some things where he acted like a child. But if you're that worried about it, dude, then don't hire the guy.
Yeah, I mean, there was a strong push for him 2 years ago by boosters there, and they just couldn't convince the leadership at Auburn to do it. Leadership's different now there. New president, new AD, a little bit easier to get it done. I know there's been a lot of reporting out there about, how he's got to go have like a sit down, like meeting with the school principal and Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner in Birmingham, and kind of go over things like, are you going to stay off Twitter? Are you going to stop being a little child about things? That's the biggest thing listen, his transgressions in the past, calling the escorts and all that stuff.
That should have been the only question. Hugh Freeze, do you still like to hang out with escorts? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then hire the guy. If the answer is yes, be like, sorry, come on.
I hate to be hypothetical. Was he calling the escorts for himself? Was he calling for recruits?
You know what? Here's the thing. The better thing is, hey, Hugh, if you're going to call escorts, please get a burner phone, okay? Don't use the company phone. Don't use the phone in your office to call an escort. Thanks, okay? What you do in your own time is your own.
Yeah, what he does is, that's the other thing. We all like to act high and mighty about this, but if you guys knew the things coaches do that never get out, everybody's got their sins and their weaknesses and bad things about them. But listen, when you're in a position of power, that does go to your head a little bit, even if you don't realize it, and you start thinking you could do things that you normally wouldn't do. So anyway, I don't want to get in a moral situation here and all this, but that Hugh Freeze is a good hire for them. listen, good
Yes.
hire for them. He's beaten Alabama. He knows how to traverse the SEC. He knows how to recruit the SEC, which has been a
Truth.
huge
Yes.
issue for Auburn the last 3 years under Brian Harsin with the recruiting classes there. It's a big time hire. The only one that would have been better, or no, there's two better. Well, one better than me. If they hired Dion, I think they'd be like number one recruiting class right out of the gate, number one transfer portal class. They'd all of a sudden be an SEC contender next year, much like USC was in the Pac 12. But
Yeah.
this would be even a bigger story because he would be able to reload that roster immediately. They're going to they could bring on as much as 45 new players there at Auburn this year, I've been told, through the transfer portal and everything. And because of the new rules, here's the other thing. For the first time, you're not limited to like 25 players or whatever in the signing class. You just have to meet that 85 scholarship limit roster. So if you have 50 kids leave, you can just bring 50 new guys in from the transfer portal in the signing class. This is huge. And you can totally revamp a roster overnight. Deion Sanders would have just been killer for them. And I think he's going to be killer for them at Colorado if that does come through, which it will. But this is about as good as you can get for Auburn. I think it's going to work out for him.
Trent Dilfer, rather, to UAB.
Yeah.
Feels like a good hire. I mean, look, Trent Dilfer is as smart as a coach as there is out there. Obviously, he's got the pedigree, but where do you sit on this hire as far as something of worth?
This is kind of risky to me. You know, people talked about Deion Sanders being a risk. I don't think he is. I think Trent Dilfer is because he's very heavily involved with the Elite 11 quarterback stuff. So we talk about like, what's his college experience? He's been heavily involved for a decade plus in dealing with these college quarterbacks and the college coaches. He's got a lot of connections. But how is he as a coach on the sidelines, on game days? How is he when developing a staff, putting the staff together and all that? He's only done that on the high school level, which I'm not downplaying high school coaches. There's been several that have gone on to be great head coaches in college football, but man, UAB is not in a position where they got to go make a weird kind of risky hire. They've got a brand new stadium there that's beautiful. They
Yep.
relaunched the program from the death just several years ago, and they still win conference
Yep.
titles. They're in a good spot there. So why couldn't you go get maybe someone who's established or someone that's had a pedigree of success? Again, this probably will work out for them either way, but it struck me that why did you feel like you have to go a different direction?
Yeah, again, I mean, I think his pedigree is there as far as his knowledge base and everything else, and maybe it just is about recruiting. You know, if he's getting
Maybe
quarterbacks and
so.
he's getting the right guys, you know that could be enough to continue to elevate a program and keep them there. Luke Fickell to Wisconsin. You know, I was waiting for somebody to snatch him up for the last couple of years, and as a matter of fact, I was sort of surprised Georgia Tech didn't even make a run at him, given that they were, and I'm here in Atlanta, obviously, so you know I thought they would have at least picked up the phone and called the guy. I don't know if they did
They
or
don't
they
have
didn't, but
they don't have the money, I hear. Is that what you're hearing?
yeah, that's probably what it is. Yeah, well, they don't want to pay the money. I'm sure that there are a lot of rich nerds who graduated from Georgia Tech. They just don't want to give the money up. There's a big difference. It's not a question of have; it's a question of want to. But again, we
Right.
digress. We need a podcast anyway. So look, I think Wisconsin found a guy who already recruits the Midwest, knows it well. The difference here is that what is the step up in talent? What is the step up in class? And how is he going to handle it? Because, you know, if the only sample size you have is Cincinnati versus Alabama in the college football playoff that year, they were outclassed from a talent standpoint. Now, does that mean that when you're at Wisconsin and you're in the Big Ten West, is it? Which is the bad one? I can't remember. Anyway,
Yeah,
you're in the Big Ten.
West, yeah.
Yeah, the Big Ten, the Big Ten suck that side. When you're not with Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan State, you know, can he go out there and win that division? Yes, I think he can. But getting smoked every year in the Big Ten title game probably doesn't get Wisconsin where they want to be.
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing here is you're matching up a program that's been the model consistency in the Big Ten West or the Big Ten less. And you've got the model consistency as a coach with Luke Fickell at Cincinnati. They just win 10 games, it seems like, every year.
Yep.
And now Fickell gets to take that step up. And the other thing is with Fickell, it was a matter of time before he's going to take a bigger job. The timing has just never really worked out. Last year, going to the playoff, couldn't quite get on to one of the bigger schools because he's still trying to coach the team. I think he would have left last year for a job, but it just the timing wasn't right.
Right.
2020, he was in the running for the Michigan State job before obviously they made the hire there, and now people are going, "Wow, he's got a $9.5 million contract every year. What are we doing after 2 of the last 3 years?" But he was going to leave. I think this is like it's just two a coach and a program that kind of mirror each other as far as results. I want to see like how because Wisconsin, as we know, the last 20, 30 years, they've won by just putting big fat guys in the trenches and just beating up on lesser opponents in that terrible Big Ten West. Well, the Big Ten, they haven't confirmed it yet, but they're probably getting rid of divisions. The schedule's going to look different in the future. They're not going to be able to eat up on the small teams there in their own division anymore. So Luke Fickell's being brought in to really take Wisconsin into this new era where they can't do things the way they've done them the last 20 years. So how does that match up with when you're going up really against now more head to head with a Penn State or Michigan or Ohio State when it just comes to week grind in the Big Ten when you're not eating up on your own division? It's a fascinating prospect to watch, and Luke Fickell's ready to take on that challenge.
All right, finally, Deion to Colorado. Not official yet. Deion has come out and said that the offer has been made. I'll phrase the question this way. Can he have them bowl eligible in under 3 years?
Yes, yeah, because of the transfer portal. And you've seen the reporting from Pete Thamel where they're already working the transfer portal, even though they're not supposed to for Colorado. They're going to bring in some stellar players in there. And again, because of this rule change where you can just supplement your roster with however many kids you have to, you can bring in 70 kids if you have to, if you have 70 kids leave. I think they can be bowl eligible within the next 3 years. Heck, I think they could be bowl eligible next year if enough kids leave that program and they're able to bring in enough potentially. I don't know.
And the other part of them being bowl eligible is that 2 of the biggest programs in the Pac-12 are walking away over the weekend. So that's going to,
you know, and listen, and Colorado had to take a quote unquote chance. That's why they're the only major program to go after Deion. I don't know why people are being so hard headed about trying to offer him, but the Colorado is an inflection point as an athletics department because goodness gracious, the Pac-12 is about to be weakened, and you're sitting there and you're trying to make yourself look glamorous, potentially to maybe even the Big 12 or the Big 10. They're lost in the wilderness, man. They're literally up in the Rocky Mountains alone, scared and cold, and no one's around them to help them. And so they had to take a chance on Deion. I think it works out for them, and I think it'll work out beautifully when, as you said, when the new Pac-12 is around here for the next couple of years, Colorado has a chance here to sneak back up.
Listen, whoever got Deion was going to make the biggest splash of the entire hiring cycle. Now it's just a matter of how it all plays out in the transfer portal. For better or worse, has changed the game, and I personally like it. I mean, I like the idea that you can rebuild in college. That you could do it quickly. It's not, I got to wait till I get my own recruits in here for 3 years kind of deal. Get guys in here who can play, get them in here who can play now, and go and make the best of it. All right, we got games to get to here today. Rest of the conference championship slate, and we'll run through it as quick as we can here. Kansas State at TCU, reverse TCU rather this game in Dallas at Jerry's World. TCU laying 2.5, total of 62. KSU 4-1 against the number in the last 5 meetings, under 6-1 in the last 7 here. Look, it's another rematch game. I don't know how much revenge factors into it, but I'll say this much. An 18-point lead for Kansas State, and then all of a sudden, injuries happened at quarterback to Will Howard and Jake Rubley. Jake Boobley. Jake, don't ever throw a pass again, Jake, is what changed the game for the K-State Wildcats in that game, and it was all she wrote. I mean, that's really what it boiled down to. After Will Howard got hurt late in the first half, early into the third quarter, Rubley comes in, throws a pick. It was back-to-back TCU touchdowns, and they never looked back again. So is this K-State team good enough to duplicate that effort with a full 4 quarters of Will Howard?
I think so. Kansas State's 3-0 with Will Howard. They're scored more than 47 points in all 3 of those games at quarterback. He provides a different dynamic to that offense than Adrian Martinez did, even though everybody's fallen in love with him and the way he's able to run. Will Howard, expands their options there. And with Deuce Vaughn running and being so dynamic, they've got an opportunity here to sprout the upset. It would not actually be a surprise to me if they do so. But again, two teams that are just so different in the first and second halves. TCU's plus 107 points in the second half. All those second half comebacks we've seen, it's the sixth best in the FBS. Kansas State plus 122 points in the first half this season, a scoring margin. So, which team steps up in the fourth quarter to me? Can Kansas State, if it's a tight game, hold off TCU's magic and Max Duggan just being absolutely flawless, it seems like, in all these comeback victories? I'll say this. I think TCU's found another gear. I know it was Iowa State. They're the worst team in the Big 12, but Iowa State's played everybody practically close this year. TCU's clicking right now. I really like TCU to win this one by 10. I think this could be a double-digit win for the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, I thought that same thing last night about USC, so I'll reserve my opinions for later. I'll say this much, though. As far as the total is concerned, between Kendra Miller of TCU and Deuce Vaughn, I expect a lot of running in this game. Like,
Yes.
I don't know if it's going to be as high scoring as people think it's going to be. I would expect both these coaches to sort of slow play things at the outset. I wouldn't be shocked to see a first half under come in as they sort of wait to see who's going to make the first mistake, who's going to make the first, try to make the first big play. But I think they both trust their running game enough. And that's not taking anything away from Max Duggan at TCU. I know Sonny Dykes has incredible faith in him, but with the success these teams have on the ground, there's no reason to take early chances and put yourself behind like Utah did last night and have to dig out of a hole.
Yeah, last 5 Big 12 championship games have hit the under. So you're onto something.
All right. Clemson and UNC. Another game that wouldn't have any juice if there was a 12-team playoff. But I guess there is some juice here for Clemson at Pride. I don't know what it is. Motivation starts to become a factor when you get into these championship games and bowl games, right? Do Clemson players really need to win the ACC? They're headed to the Citrus Bowl regardless, I think, right? But nonetheless, it's one of those things where how much will you get out of Clemson in this game, I think matters. Drake May of North Carolina sort of starting to come back down to earth a little bit, got thrown into that Heisman conversation a couple of weeks ago. Looks like he's starting to, remember that he's a freshman and hasn't played all that many games yet. But I would probably take the points. No play in this game for me, but I'd probably take the points at USC if you put a gun to my head.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm absolutely with you there. This just sets up as just like two teams like, what are we playing for? We both lost our regular season finales. I do think North Carolina might have a little bit more juice to them just to get going. And Drake May, I think, is going to have a very nice game after the last 2 games. Just the last 2 games for him have just looked pedestrian. I heard people on TV still talking about, is Drake May going to make it to New York City still? I'm like, shouldn't. Not to me. I don't.
If he takes
I don't
the bus,
know. Yeah.
He takes the
But
bus, the train. That's about it.
I'm with you right there. But here's the thing: North Carolina is 3-0 straight up as an underdog this year. I don't know. This game will be entertaining, but there's just really not much on the line other than some pride. And to go deeper in all this, gosh, I've been so disappointed in the defense of Clemson here lately. Way too much talent, and boy, in a bigger picture thing here, Clemson, I think they're at an inflection point here. They Dabo Swinney's just so stubborn. He promotes from within. He never hits the transfer portal. And now you're about to lose all this talent defensively. You lost both your coordinators last year, and you did not play anywhere near to what you're capable of achieving offensively and defensively, partially because of coaching decisions, but also just in-game adjustments or lack thereof. And you're going to have less talent next season. They better change their philosophy there. They better start hitting the transfer portal. They better be looking at maybe making some staff changes and hiring from outside the program.
The short answer for Clemson, if Cade Klubnik, is it Klubnik or Klubnik? I've heard it pronounced both ways.
Klubnik.
Which one? It's Klubnik. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
If Cade Klubnik is as good as advertised, right? He was like one of the top 2 or 3 quarterback prospects in the country. If he's as good as advertised, Clemson will be fine because they have enough talent on the defensive side of the ball. Like, I don't disagree with your assessment of the coaching changes and some of the things that need to be done, but given the conference that they play in and the competition they play against, pure talent alone should be enough to elevate them back to the top of the ACC again next year without the coaching changes. If they add those in, you get Klubnik, you get the same guys on defense that are very, very good. I don't see them taking too much of a step back. Are they more vulnerable? Probably, but there's enough in the cupboard still from a talent perspective that Clemson has to be able to stay near the top of that conference. All right, let's move on to a non-Power 5 championship game. UCF and Tulane. Green Wave laying 3.5 here, total of 56. Underdog 4-0 against the number in the last 4. UCF 2-5 ATS in their last 7. Does Willie Fritz continue his ascent to the top of the college football coaching lexicon here with Tulane taking this championship?
Yeah, I think so. I think Tulane avenges that regular season loss in New Orleans. I love the way Tulane didn't really give up when they got down big against UCF at home. They came back, made a game of it. And really, if Tulane could just be like a half step better against the run with John Reese Plumlee at quarterback for UCF, they will beat UCF today. Gus Malzahn teams have a tendency to really struggle in championship games and championship game environments, whether it was in the SEC championship, obviously, or BCS national championship at Auburn. I don't know if that's just him being tight as a coach or whatever, but I do not see John Reese Plumlee, who, by the way, was entering this week questionable, but I'm told he's going to play. He's had a hamstring issue of his own. He's not 100%. He's not going to be able to run the way he did in that last matchup. He rushed for 176 yards, 2 touchdowns at quarterback for UCF in that one. Give me Tulane to win the conference championship. And Willie Fritz, by the way, I am surprised that Georgia Tech did not hire him. I understand the love with Brent Key right now and promoting him, but man, Willie Fritz would have been a home run, and he's going to be a Power 5 head coach in this next coaching cycle.
And the idea that someone was scared off by his age to me was sort of weird.
That's ridiculous. It's silly.
I don't disagree. I mean, listen, and you're talking to a pure ageist. Like, I hate NFL referees because they're like too old and slow, and they're trying to catch up with a game of kids who are half their age and run 4.5 40s. That said, coaching doesn't matter what your age is. If you can coach, you can coach. I mean,
yeah, look at Kyle Willingham.
Yeah, I mean, no one's complaining that Bill Belichick is too old or Nick Saban is too old. Like, I understand they have champions, but it's like, your age, whether you can coach it, it was a weird pivot for Georgia Tech. That's another one where I think they didn't want to spend the money. I think Brent Key was cheap. He was economical for them, and that's why they went in that direction. All right, SEC championship, LSU, Georgia laying 17.5, total of 51.5. LSU 4-0-1 against a number in the last 5 meetings. The over is 7-2 in the last 9 meetings, and the over has come in the SEC championship, I think, 4 consecutive years in a row now, which is what jumped
11,
off the page. The fact that this total opened at 50.5 and is 51.5. I mean, the over seems very plausible here.
Yeah, 11 of the last 13 SEC championship games have gone over. So this could be
Brandon. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, there's just something about playing in a dome in Atlanta that gets these offenses going there. And even last year, I mean, Alabama, Georgia, we were all sitting there thinking it's going to be a defensive battle and just explosions everywhere. Georgia's lost the last 3 times there in the SEC championship game. LSU's won the last 3 times in the SEC championship game. Now, obviously, those teams are not the same. Doesn't really mean anything, but Georgia, I think, is motivated to finally get a conference crown. Yes, you won a national championship last year, but they lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game. That has been under their skin all year. They are going to come out with their hair on fire. I don't know, though, if they will cover. I do think that Georgia wins, and they'll do so by a healthy margin. This is one where I don't know if I touch. I'm just confident that Georgia's going to win, probably by anywhere between 10 to 14.
I have this for you, Brandon. I'll save it for my play of the day. I'll save it for then. But this is you're going to love this. This is a Brandon Marcello special coming up here for the POD. That said, the math of this is very simple here. If LSU gets to 17, this game's going over. If they are kept to 14 or 13 or under, it probably stayed. Like, that's the only way this works out at 51. If you look at this thing objectively, and I know certain transitive properties don't apply here, but if Georgia could hold Tennessee's offense to 13 points, and oh, by the way, 7 of those 13 points came with 4 minutes left in that game, right? So they basically were held without a touchdown for 3.5 quarters against. And we know that Tennessee's offense was much better than LSU's. The idea that they could hold LSU to 13 points probably is a pretty valid assumption. So, you can get to 34-13 and you're still under and they still cover, right? Like 37-13 still gets you a cover here. So that's what you're basically betting on. If you feel like Georgia's defense is going to keep LSU to 13 or under, then the only way Georgia covers is by getting into the mid-30s and holding them to 13. The problem is that Georgia does not need to win by margin here. And Kirby Smart all year long has not cared one iota about style points. Not only that, and nobody's talked about this enough, unless you've really been here in Atlanta diving into it, Georgia's red zone offense this year has been pretty bad when it comes to scoring touchdowns. They're great overall when you talk about score percentage. They're in the mid-90s. They almost never not get points when they get in that area of the field. But that said, they've settled for a lot of field goals this year. And when that and Kirby Smart is more than willing and more than content to kick a field goal, put his defense back out on the field, and go, next time we get the ball, we'll do a Kirby Smart death march of 12 plays, 70 yards, 7.5 minutes, and kick another field goal. Why? Because we control the game and you don't. And that's really the mentality with which he's going to play with here in this game. And you're right. Georgia has won one SEC title. The last one was in 2017 when they beat Auburn 28-7. Alabama wasn't involved in that. The last 3 times they went to a championship game against Alabama or LSU, they got the snot kicked out of them. And a lot of the players who were in that 2019 game, there are still several players on this team right now who have said this week they really want this SEC championship. It means something to them. To your point earlier, conference titles mean something to these kids. They want to go play in a certain conference. They want to be on a team in a certain conference and win that title because they saw growing up how big that moment was on TV. So that stuff matters. I agree 100%. I'm with you. Georgia's going to win this game. I'll tell you what I'm going to do later on in the show for my play of the day. You're going to love it. It's going to be right up your alley. Final game, Purdue, Michigan, a Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis. Michigan laying 16.5, total of 51. The favorite 5-2 against the number in the last 7 meetings. And here's my favorite stat. Under Jeff Brom, the Purdue Boilermakers, 3-0 against top 3 teams. In fact, the last 3 times Jeff Brom and the Purdue Boilermakers have been a double-digit dog in the Big Ten, whether in the conference championship game or not. Not only did Jeff Brom cover, won the game outright. I don't think he's going to win the game outright, but Purdue is side here.
And they won all 3 of those by double digits.
Purdue. Yeah, crazy.
Insane.
Right? Yeah. So Jeff Brom is a double-digit dog. Give me.
Yeah, I'm there with you. Donovan Edwards for Michigan. Blake Corum's out for the season, as you guys know, knee injury, out for the year. Donovan Edwards, though, is explosive. You saw it last week against Ohio State. Rushed for 207 yards in the second half when Ohio State just got in their turtle shell and went down into the sewer. Just absolutely just did not show up in that fourth quarter. Listen, Michigan's going to win this one, obviously, but I like Purdue to cover very much so in this one. Michigan's point differential, number 1 in the FBS, but I think this is going to be a pretty tight game in the first half, and that'll be enough.
Yeah. You know why? Because Jeff Brom's going to employ this tactic on defense called use a safety, something Ryan Day didn't feel like doing. Just put one guy back there and say, nobody get behind him. Just, they call it a safety for a reason. He's like the safety guy. Like, nobody gets past him.
You know why? Everybody. I've gotten this feeling. People make fun of the Big Ten championship game, like going in, like but there's reason for it. Last 5 Big Ten championship games have had double-digit spreads, and that's crazy to think.
Iowa.
Yeah, and that's crazy to think because Purdue's the first unranked team to be in the Big 12 championship or Big Ten championship, since 2012 when Wisconsin went in there. This isn't like it's been like that every year. It's just Big Ten West, just terrible. East Division's 8-0 in this game, but Purdue will put up a fight. Michigan just does whatever it wants with the tempo, as I've mentioned on the show previously. Purdue covers. Michigan wins.
Yeah, again, there'll probably be a little bit of emotional letdown after beating Ohio State. Not only that, though, again, I don't think J.J. McCarthy is throwing 3 touchdown passes in this game again. Like, that's my problem with the Michigan offense all season long has been him. Not that I think he's a bad quarterback. I just don't think he is the kind of guy that elevates enough and you can trust to throw a ton of big plays to in critical situations, third down, things of that nature. And he doesn't necessarily have to because his defense and his run game are so good. But I don't think you'll see that same J.J. McCarthy again.
Yeah,
Like I said,
I've come around on that too. I'm with you there. I was a big J.J. McCarthy. I thought he elevated guys, but that Illinois game and overthrowing guys in the red zone when the field's already shorter, he's got to figure something out here in this offseason.
And again, it was weird too. If you go back and look, like against lesser teams and bad defenses, it was weird how much they struggled. Like they couldn't put 40 up on Maryland, who was a bottom defense last year in the Big Ten. They couldn't. Indiana's defense is terrible. They only scored 31 against them. I mean, it's like I expect. Like they put up 52 on Rutgers. That's what I expected on a week in, week out. You don't do that against Iowa. I get it. You don't do that against Illinois. I get it. But this is a Purdue team and a Purdue defense that isn't really all that great either. Like them getting to 40 in this game, they shouldn't break a sweat despite the fact that there's no Blake Corum. But I don't see them getting there either. By the way, the fact that this total was higher than the SEC total was also a little bit alarming to me.
Yeah, very much so.
All right, college football playoff championship odds here. We'll get to our plays of the day here coming up. Ohio State now, minus 140 to get back into this thing. If I'm reading this right here on our rundown.
I think
Ohio
that
State
may have been Georgia. That's got to be Georgia, right?
Got to be Georgia. Okay, yes, that's right. I'm sorry. Ohio State plus 375. Worth a flyer on Ohio State at this point in time? Yes or no?
Yes. If Ryan Day removes his head from his backside in the second half of a tight game.
The head up there isn't the problem. It's getting the headset on while it's up there. That's the problem. You see, the coaching, you can't put the headset on while your head's on your keister.
I'm going to tell you, again, going off track here, but that was one of the worst coaching jobs on any level this year in the second half.
We agree.
And that was
last week. Yeah, it was bad.
Terrible.
It was bad.
I would still, I'd put some money on Ohio State right now. They just got the talent, man, and they're built to beat Georgia. They're built to beat Georgia.
Yep. They're one of the 3 teams in the nation, I believe, that would give Georgia fits. One of them was eliminated last night in USC if they had a healthy Caleb Williams in that offense, because I've seen Lincoln Riley put up 51 on a Georgia defense before, so I wouldn't doubt that he could do it again. And Alabama's the other. But yeah, I mean, look, if we get TCU to win today, okay, we get the Georgia-Ohio State matchup that we ultimately wanted. And that, to me, is something that I'm looking. That's part of the reason, even though I backed K-State, and I did so on the Pickswise.com website, part of me just says if TCU wins this thing, hopefully they only win it by 2, so I can have my cake and eat it too. But nonetheless, we get Georgia-Ohio State, which is a matchup that for 2 or 3 years now we've all wondered what that would look like.
Yeah, I'm with you. Georgia, man, despite being the number 1 seed, you're looking at the possibility of having to either face Caleb Williams or CJ Stroud. That's a tough ask, and it's going to be very entertaining, man.
Sign me up. All right, before we get to our plays of the day, I want to remind you, Let's Bet It is presented by Superbook Sports. Can you beat Vegas this football season? Superbook gives you the chance every week to go head-to-head with the best odds makers in Las Vegas. No fancy computer algorithms, no one across the pond setting lines for American sports, just the best team of traders in the business at Superbook in Las Vegas, plus some of the best odds and promo bets in the country. If you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee, download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com to start your battle against Vegas. That'll bring us to the moment of truth here, Brandon Marcello. You and I have gone back and forth. We've debated, we've disagreed, we've agreed, we have come to the moment that makes us men and separates us from the boys. It's time for our play of the day. I will go to beauty before age. You may tee us off there, sir.
Thank you so much. Also, I'm very excited to hear what you have to say. So here we go. I'll get this out of the way. Give me the total under in the AAC championship. Again, Gus Malzahn gets tight in these championship environments, does not score points very easily. and Tulane's defense is going to play better against the run, against a hobbled John Reese Plumlee, who went off for 175 yards on the ground for them. Think this game goes under. I like this. That's my lock.
All righty. For my play of the day, we're going to take something that you said earlier, and we're going to make it work to our advantage. That is, in the SEC championship game against Georgia. Georgia's going to win by a decent margin. The question is, how much? How much have we seen Georgia really separate from teams this year? Not all that much. But Georgia is extra motivated. These kids want to win. And here's what will happen. Let's take Georgia, -10 in the first half, because Georgia will build an early lead, because that's what they are good at. They will get out early and score and take you emotionally out of the game, and then let the Kirby Smart death march go on for the next 2.5 quarters as they just slog down the field every single time and force you to use the clock. And you get down the field, you get to kick your field goal, you get to score your touchdown late. But at that point, Georgia's already up 21-3, and it doesn't matter to them. Georgia will get out early enough here to score and take a big lead at halftime. And then what will happen is we'll see why every Georgia game ended up closer than expected and not covering, because Stetson Bennett will throw an interception because he doesn't care, and Georgia will let them score because, you know what? They're going to make them take 9 minutes to do it because they're going to make them earn every single yard the whole way out. So Georgia will end up winning this game by 13, maybe 17. But guess what? They're not going to cover the 18.5, but they will cover in the first half. Georgia -10, taking a big lead early and then just kind of sitting on it and coasting for the final 2 quarters of this thing. I don't think LSU rather has a shot here, Brandon. I've said for weeks that LSU and Tennessee were overrated. I was proven right on Tennessee. I'll be proven right on LSU as I was last week with A&M. Georgia will win this thing. I don't think they cover the 18.5, but I think they cover the 10 in the first half.
If that happens in the first half, they're going to start talking about, does Stetson Bennett belong in New York City to be in the Heisman race?
Oh, please
And I will mute the television.
Yes, I will do exactly the same. I will do exactly the same. But nonetheless, I get into this argument routinely with folks on Twitter about Stetson Bennett, and they're all Georgia homers, which is fine. I get it. Listen, saying Stetson Bennett isn't in the same conversation as Caleb Williams, C.J. Stroud, and Bryce Young doesn't mean Stetson Bennett stinks. Doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback. Saying he's not as good a pro prospect as Caleb Williams, C.J. Stroud, and Bryce Young doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback. Just means he's not those guys. It's okay. 2 things can be true at the same time. So that's where we're going. You are going the under in the Conference USA Championship game. I am going first half, Georgia, -10 for our plays of the day. Make sure you guys download the Pickswise app, available on the Apple Store and Google Play. Subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel as well. Leave those comments. Give us a thumbs up. Tell us you like all the content there as well. For Brandon Marcello, I'm Mark Zitto. Enjoy Championship Saturday, and we'll talk to you guys again tomorrow and also next week. Have a wonderful Saturday. Go get it. Go bet it. Go cash some tickets.